Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session this morning or this afternoon, as it may be for you, at TIESS, where we will be addressing the question, how best can we gather, analyze, and use local evidence to improve learning and education? My name is Dr. Kristen Weatherby, and I'm an education consultant and researcher based in the United Kingdom. And I'm really happy to be here with three great panelists to moderate this session today. So the way this session will work is we will have three speakers, our lovely panelists, speaking for 10 minutes each, and then we will move to questions and discussion. We hope that there will be a really active discussion amongst the panelists, and this is your opportunity to post your questions in the chat that you'll see on your system, and we will do our best to address any questions that we receive. So first, I would like to start with Mr. Ernest Janoves, who is the founder and CEO of Edurio, a startup company that's based in both the United Kingdom and Latvia. So Ernest, if you'd like to begin.
Thank you very much, Kristen. Really glad to be part of this panel, as evidence gathering and use to improve learning and education is something that we need more of globally, and something that has made a difference to many countries that we see at the moment in combating the implications of COVID-19. What I plan to talk about is I'll briefly tell a little about Edurio, about our work, about how we've been reacting to COVID-19 and gathering evidence in particular. And then I'd like to briefly talk about the three elements of this discussion and how best we can gather, analyze, and use local evidence. Now, Edurio is a survey, design, and management organization. We work with both individual schools, school groups, and governments on designing research instruments to measure elements most important to a good education. And we typically collaborate with academic partners and school groups in designing those, for example, University College London Institute of Education or United Learning, one of the largest school groups in the UK. And then we've also built a technology platform that allows easy collection of stakeholder feedback and data visualization back to the group level as well as the school level. And I'll talk a little bit more about why that is important. Historically, we've worked on a range of topics. For example, staff well-being, which is one of key elements to ensure good quality education. In the UK, we've ran the largest annual staff well-being research with about 10,000 participants every year. We've also done research on parental engagement, equality, inclusion, and diversity, and various other topics important to education. Now, when COVID hit our partners and schools that we work with globally, as a team, we looked at saying, okay, how can we support the schools and the school groups the best during this challenging time? And we realized that what the system needs in this unprecedented time is rapid evidence of what is working and what is not. And it needed for two purposes. One is for, we could call damage control, to really understand, while we are all learning in a completely new way to us, how do we best react to it? How do we best organize the learning? But second, and as important, is what can we take from this experience that is challenging for everyone for a better future, for a future that is not just back to the normal, but is learning from the new ways of experiencing education right now. So we've done projects both in the UK and Latvia on a national scale during COVID-19. In the UK, we ran surveys set for parents, pupils, and staff members with 45,000 participants across about 300 schools, and gathered evidence around well-being during this time, the learning process, the community, and leadership in schools. And we've put out a number of research papers that are available on our website on this. We also worked in Latvia with the Ministry of Education, where they approached us because we are in about half of the country's schools, and they said, we really need to understand what is going on right now. How can we support the school leaders in all corners of Latvia to make sure we understand what technology is needed for them, where are they lacking, and how we can react faster. And so we designed probably the most comprehensive national survey within this COVID period, where over 100,000 participants took part all over Latvia. And it is a small country, so the 100,000 participants represented over 10% of the country's parents, over 20% of pupils in those age groups, and a third of all staff members working in schools. And what that did is that changed the narrative from here's a research project to actually here is what the staff members in the school are saying. And we have a significant enough proportion. In addition, the ministry asked us to ensure that all school leaders in the country took part in the research and were able to tell the government where they need support. Now that's a little bit of the context. Now, if we think about what kind of evidence, how we analyze and how we use it, there's a couple of quick points that I want to make. Now, obviously, when we talk about evidence, any information about the learning and the overall experience of the stakeholders is evidence and valuable evidence. And we should not discard assessment data. We should not discard just the anecdotal feedback. So all across the range, we've got really valuable evidence. The bit that we focus on is rapid stakeholder feedback. And where we rely on those, while of course it is not perfect, it will not answer to all the questions, a subjective way of understanding the experience, it's important to take that into account because they are yours on the ground. They are the people experiencing the education experience right now, and they can provide rapid evidence in what's going on. So that's the kind of evidence that we've been focusing on, and I will be very keen to hear from Dan Sandhu and Dr. Basir on the various kinds of evidence that they've used during this period, but that we firmly believe cannot be missing from any crisis response, but any overall improvement program. Now, the second important element is how we analyze feedback. And the important element there is feedback cannot be detached from the demographic properties of the respondents. One of the things that we've learned in the UK and Latvia and internationally is that pupils experience the situation radically different. Now, about 40% of pupils in the UK said they're perfectly fine with learning this way. A minority said they're actually enjoying learning remotely more. They have less bullying, they have less distraction, less travel time. And I think we as professionals in work environment feel similarly. Some of us say, well, finally I can focus. Finally, I can spend more time like this. So it's just working with averages is not sufficient. We need to understand how are the pupils that have disengaged with learning before, how are they experiencing this? How are pupils with disability experiencing this? How many pupils have access to their own place of work or their own piece of technology to use? And that's an extremely important context to use any evidence on remote learning well. It needs to be put in the context of the school, of the family, and the demographic properties of either the staff members or the pupils responding. Because it's not about averages, it's about the varied experiences that everybody faces. Now, the third element, which I want to briefly touch upon, is use of feedback as evidence. Take a slightly different approach to most national research programs because we believe that to use evidence well, it needs to be applied in the school. Every school is different. Every school has different local conditions. So when we designed the technology platform, it was important that it's not enough for the government to gather data. It's not enough for a school group to gather data. It is important for the school to understand how this data applies to them. So when we gather feedback within the Eduro platform, every school leader has an account where they see all their results and they can benchmark that against the country's average results. And that is what we believe leads to change when feedback is used to empower the local leaders in education in a way that helps communicate what we care about, in a way that helps them make better decisions, but also helps those decisions be aligned with the priorities for the school group or the country. And so to summarize, evidence is a wide field, and we need to gather and look at all kinds of evidence in order to come out of this stronger and take the lessons that we have experienced during this period. And now, when we analyze, it is important to look at it within context and with the properties of the respondents in mind, or participants of that evidence. And importantly, when we use evidence, it needs to be used throughout the system, not just centrally, not just locally. Thank you very much. I look forward to the discussion.
Ernest, you've started us off well. That was so interesting, and I can see lots of topics that'll come up in the discussion, and it was exactly to time. I would next like to invite and to welcome His Excellency Dr. Abbas Basir, who is the Minister of Higher Education for the Government of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. So Dr. Basir, would love to hear your thoughts for the next few minutes.
Thank you, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning and good afternoon. In Afghanistan, there is afternoon, and because of that, I'm saying good afternoon. But in the UK, maybe it is already morning. First of all, I would like to thank all the organizers for organizing this very important meeting and discussing this very important subject. According to my understanding, education institutions, including universities, are among the oldest well-established institutions in modern history. For centuries, they were able to operate without any major transformation. Universities are among the most conservative cultural and organizational institutions, with extremely vocal yet highly transitory constituencies, including faculty and the students. These groups can effectively mobilize themselves against policy change likely to challenge established practices and vested interests. However, the image of stability and continuity associated with the concept of the university has been recently shattered. Indeed, powerful transformative forces are challenging higher education system and institutions all over the world. There are different factors that require changing the higher education system and transforming the higher education system. First of all, a growing number of factors are at play in transforming the ecosystem in which higher education institutions are operating. Among these factors are technological innovations such as flipped classrooms for interactive learning, mass online open courses reaching hundreds of thousands of students all over the world, new forms of competitions from for-profit and corporate universities that provide professional qualifications closely linked to labor market needs, and new accountability modalities like the global ranking, which allow to measure and compare the performance of universities across all continents. These are the major factors which uh, mm, requires transforming the higher education system. Second, as a result of the financial downturn, the higher education sector in most regions of the world has been adversely affected by serious crisis factors. The cuts have been even more severe throughout the developing world and in transition countries, with the aggravation of falling household incomes and soaring graduate unemployment rates. The third important factor, which is very important, is the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, which have shaken up global socioeconomic structures. COVID-19 has revealed the world's vulnerabilities. It has created the largest disruption of education system in history, affecting nearly 1.6 billion learners in more than 190 countries and all continents. At the same time, it has highlighted the importance of expertise and science, research and innovation, cooperation, information, and transparency. E-learning and digital education, e-governance and e-commerce have received a tremendous interest worldwide. Significant effort is being made into making e-governance, e-commerce, and e-learning a reality. And also information and communication technologies are widely acknowledged as important resources for socioeconomic development. In Afghanistan, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Ministry of Higher Education established an online learning system for higher education. The system, called HLMS, is designed to include all data regarding students, teachers, universities, and departments, and allowing all the teachers and lecturers to share their courses with the students through online database system. And now we are working to develop an effective online learning system which enable us to enroll thousands of students in the higher education. Before COVID-19, online education system was not recognized by the education system. But nowadays, we are working to develop such a kind of system to engage most of our young generation to enroll to the education system. This is because of the positive impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Considering the above circumstances, data and evidence can play an important role in decision-making, where data are considered to form an ideal basis for coordinating decisions and activities on different levels in the higher education system. Evidence-based policy is an approach that helps people make well-informed decisions about policies, programs, and projects by putting the best available evidences at the heart of policy development and implementation. Conversely, opinion-based policy bases decision-making on ideological or individual perspectives. Therefore, instead of organizing higher education policy on the basis of a combination of ideology and personal experience, it is essential to build a body of relevant knowledge that can help define the range of reform options and make decisions suitably based on available evidence about causes and effects. It highlights the importance of learning systematically from careful evaluation of the impacts of reforms in order to inform policy making. At the national level, policy analysis and decision making must be based on a careful understanding of the situation and the potential effects of each reform option. At the institutional level, universities must develop their institutional research capacity, monitor the main elements of their performance, and make development decisions based on the lessons of experience. Learning from the experience of others nationally and internationally is not about copying or imitating policies from other institutions or countries. But the lessons of experience can help understand what works and what does not work under various conditions and circumstances in order to increase the probability of success and avoid repeating the mistakes of others. Conducting research and use of scientific data and evidence is very important for understanding the existing problems in the system of higher education and finding accurate solutions and developing effective strategies for enhancing the quality of education. The decisions based on data and evidence are mostly deliberate and competent. Furthermore, the strategies developed according to local data and evidence will bring effectiveness and efficiency in the system of higher education. Considering the importance of scientific data and evidence and policy development, we in Afghanistan now are working to develop our third strategic plan on the basis of data collected by a task force from by a task force which is being delegated by minister to develop this strategy. The third strategic plan would be based on the available data which would be collected by this task force. This task force is delegated to be in contact with different sectors, private and public sector, public universities, private universities, and also other relevant ministries to talk to them. And also this task force is delegated to be in contact with companies, private companies, to understand the situation in regard to education and what is their priorities and how can we meet their needs, their requirements according to new situation. The information which is collected by this by this team is very essential for developing this strategic plan. According to our plan, this strategic plan, which is the third strategic plan, will be finalized at the end of March. I have delegated this task force to finalize all the requirements, and then they come with a draft to the ministry, which will be again discussed with the same people who we have already been in contact with them. This will help us to base this strategic plan on the base of data and information which is available on the hand of different sectors, and this is the way that we are following for developing this strategic plan. Of course, I would like to add one more information in this meeting that due to COVID-19, we have already established HLMS platform for online education. This is an initial experience which needs to be developed, because according to this system, lecturers are only recording their lessons and then uploading their lessons to this system, which is available on the system, and students can get the lessons from the system at any time that they are able to connect to the internet, because one of the problem here in Afghanistan is access to internet, and in some areas there is less possibility of having access to internet, and because of that, this system is designed as such that students can take the lessons at any time that they have access to internet. And nowadays we are working on another system which is free for students, because one of the challenges that we are facing is the cost of the internet. And now we are working with different companies how they can provide free internet for students, and also online learning and education for the students. In general, our government is working to enhance e-governance in Afghanistan by enhancement of and promoting the internet infrastructure. This will enable us to have a live online education system instead of HLMS. HLMS is not enough for us to have such a kind of online education system. So according to this strategy, we will be working on 2-3 important areas. First is the quality education, the other is research activities, and we are going to mostly focus on improving and enhancing research activities among the universities, and because of that we are working to establish different research centers and the universities. Along with this, we are going to establish online education platform for our universities to enable us even to get support of teachers who are teaching in abroad. And there are many Afghans, thousands of Afghan teachers who are teaching in abroad and foreign universities. They can help us in this regard, and the online education system can facilitate these facilities for us to get the advantage of those Afghans who are in foreign universities. These are our experience, and of course, with the new evidence and new data that we are getting and new facilities that we are getting, we can more improve our capacities in terms of education system and e-learning system, and how to adapt to COVID-19 pandemic in this time. I'm hopeful that with this kind of meeting, we will share the experience of other countries and get those experiences and learn from those experiences and adopt those experiences to Afghanistan also. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Basir. I'm really pleased that we
to my colleagues globally. Namaste to people in India. Sat Sri Akal. Salam alaikum to my friends in Pakistan. And for Ernst, Sveki, I think that's right. And that's what sums it up. And that's really important to understand. It's education. Education is global. Education has to be treated like a nation building tool or a nation rebuilding tool. Education is not fast food. Please don't treat it like fast food. It has to be sustainable. It has to look into the long term. It is fundamental to the future of children. If the pandemic has taught us anything, it is the after effects of the pandemic will last for a generation because of the educational gap. That effect will be quite daunting. So I'm going to talk briefly a bit about Sparks and our history, a bit about COVID and what we did. But I think it's very important to get the context right. COVID is here. We've dealt with it. We are dealing with it. Education will continue. As Dr. Abbas quite rightly put, education has been here for thousands of years and will be here for thousands of years. And therefore, what we do needs to be sustainable past COVID. What we do as a COVID measure cannot be deemed to be appropriate. The evidence we're gathering now is interesting. The evidence we're gathering right now is useful, but that is not the basis of long-term educational decisions because it is a false market. I was talking to my team, I was talking to my contacts in the UK industry, just to make sure everyone's just trying to really, the context is, it is a false market. The teachers are working remotely, parents are at home, teachers, students are at home or working with imperfect information. The evidence we're gathering, therefore, cannot be a true representation of what a product can deliver in the long run. It's very useful for the time being, but that's a good context. So just drawing back a bit, let's talk about a bit of history of Spark. Sparks, we are a research and evidence-based organization. We started off with a pure passion to research what delivers great mathematical learning. Mathematics was our core subject, and we did this on the basis of evidence and research. We built the business over the 10 years. We have been very fortunate that we've grown from a very modest start, and in the last 2 years, we've grown from a modest start of only a few hundred students and 3 schools that we had in mid-2018 to finding ourselves with over 1,900 schools, 1.7 million students, representing over 50% of all secondary schools in England. We also recently have been going international. We have a small footprint in about 20 countries. It is all about, we teach mathematics in secondary schools, in secondary education. So for my global colleagues, that's age range 11 till 16. And so that is sort of where we operate. We're fortunate to work with some of the largest school groups in the UK, the Multi-Academy Trust in the UK. Actually, I think we work with most of the Multi-Academy Trusts in the UK. We have a fantastic relationship with the Department for Education, who have been very humbling for us to promote us in their list of recommended providers. We also worked with the BBC during COVID to provide them information for bite size. So what is it about us that's different? We do a lot of research, and we've published our research. Recently, we partnered with Cambridge University for them to undertake independent research. Research that an education technology provider does for themselves is really useful, but research validated by an independent source, nothing like it. That's the evidence you need. So we worked with the RAND organization and Cambridge University, and they have undertaken the research, and they will publish the research, and we have, we cannot challenge their conclusions. Now, it is fantastic to see that their conclusions are really complementary, but we are very open, and we publish all our research on our website, and I encourage people to read it. It's useful irrespective of whether it sparks or not. Things like, is it valuable to do homework? We all assume it is, but is there evidence to prove that homework makes a difference? Is it important for students to watch videos around education? And how do they use those videos? Those core assumptions that we make have to be tested. We've been fortunate because of the type of organization we are, that we went through a rigorous process of randomized, double-blind controlled trials over many years before we ever went operationally live. And that's very important to understand. Most industries grow up based on evidence. I will give you an example, which is relevant for every member of, it is relevant now more than for everyone in this conference. When you take medicine, and COVID is a best example of anything, you need evidence that medicine works. Otherwise, why would you take the medicine? The medical industry has gone through years of providing evidence that there's efficacy of that medicine. Otherwise, why would you take Panadol, ibuprofen, AstraZeneca medicines? AstraZeneca and Pfizer have had to rush through that evidence, but that is the same principle. Bad education technology can do just as much damage as good. So it is not just about making sure children have education despite the outcomes. It has to be very carefully monitored. So over COVID, what we did is we did a lot of work with our schools. We worked closely with providing free propositions to schools around the world, based on the fact that we could demonstrate the evidence of success, we could demonstrate the outcomes. And gathering evidence is one thing, and we've been in a situation where during this period, we're actively developing our products. So our use of that data manifests itself quite real and actually into the product. not work. Finally, make sure you challenge. When seeking evidence, make sure you challenge and challenge again, because what happens, everyone becomes very polite. Now remember, in education, the people who buy the education and education tools don't use the tools. It's the children that will either be the beneficiaries or will be left behind. That's all I have to say. I'm going to hand back. To Kristen, and we'll have love to have an interesting debate about this.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dan. I really appreciate your passion about this. And I wish that all education technology company CEOs were as passionate about evidence as you. We have had some questions come in from the viewers of our panel, and we have about 15 minutes, a little bit less. I have to stop this 5 minutes before 10. And so we have a few minutes to discuss some of these questions. But one of the things that all of you mentioned that I would like all of you to give your thoughts on is, what have we learned from the school closures and remote learning and hybrid learning, and some of the policies that have gone into place and practices that our innovative teachers and school leaders have put into place during COVID-19 that could change our vision for learning in the future? And if you can address this from your particular point of view, Dr. Basir, from your point of view in higher education, and also as a policymaker, I think I might start with you to talk to us about what you have learned in Afghanistan or from around the world that you think will change your vision for education.
Thank you for this very important question. I think one of the most important understanding related to the COVID-19 pandemic is that in terms of universities, our ideas is being changed in terms of having physical classrooms and physical gathering in one classroom and having a specific campus for the universities. It will change the concept of university campuses. I think after this, we'll be having virtual universities without having any requirement of campuses and coming together and sit together and discuss different issues. So and also in terms of number of students, maybe thousands of students and all over the world will be having access to higher education through virtual classes and virtual mechanism for education. I think that it will change. It will be changed by this phenomena, and this would be one of the most important consequences of the COVID-19.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. Just being able to give access to higher education to more students who maybe would not be near a university that they could attend, or maybe the university that's close to them would not have the courses that they are interested in taking. And of course, that
For anyone interested in the deeper insights, if you go to edurio.com/insights, you can find all our reports on it. But three things I want to highlight. The first thing is the leaders in education matter. The school leaders hold the key to the success of this experience in their school. There are large differences in how pupils, parents, and staff members perceived the COVID-19 impact in their school that did not depend on the external, the type of school, the type of institution. The decisions that the school leaders made were critical. And they are also the ones most squeezed at this point because they have to solve all the challenges now. So for all policymakers, for all group leaders, take care of your school leaders. That's lesson one. Lesson two, clarity of communication has had the biggest correlation with positive experience during this pandemic. We, as group leaders, we frequently feel like we need to be perfect. We need to know all the answers. And in a world that is changing all the time, we never do know all the answers. So it is important to communicate promptly with the parents, with the pupils, with the staff members, and tell them what we know, but also what we don't know. Tell them that things might change, and that's okay. So promptness of communication. And the third thing I want to just highlight in technology is it's not what it seems. So if we look back at the first applications of technology in education, we were taking a book and putting it on a PDF. And that was the application of technology. Did that deliver better pedagogy? Not necessarily. Our research on different types of learning experiences shows that live lessons on Zoom do not have higher correlation with positive performance in learning than recorded lessons. So I think the lesson for us is the future of education, the things that we need to take away are not the obvious ones. Let's just take a classroom and let's put it online. It is how do we fundamentally differently approach the learning through technology? So 3 little points, as I said, more in adira.com/insights.
That's great, Ernest. Thank you so much. Dan, what do you think? What have we learned that's going to help change education in the future?
I think what's happened is parents around the world have suddenly realized there is a thing called education technology. Parents around the world have suddenly appreciate what teachers go through. I mean, I think the awareness of the intricacies of education have come to the fore. So that's a key thing. Just the pure awareness of education technology is massive, both from skeptical teachers and schools, but also from parents. Second, has shown is that the disadvantaged populations suffers very quickly, and the divide, the inequity in education rises. And the speed at which that has happened has been quite incredible, and I think it's very visible to everyone. Finally, I think it's I'm not pointing fingers at any government around the world, but ignorance and arrogance are a very dangerous mix. And when the people who suffer are the children, that's one where the government needs more information, on more feedback on what is happening in the real world, not the theoretical world, not the civil servant world, but the real practical application of policies and the practical use of technology. And in the absence of that, the government, it's not their fault, they make wrong decisions because they are not at the front line. And a bit like medicine, in education, when you make wrong decisions, the people making the decisions don't suffer. It's those children who will suffer for generations. So I think more information, more feedback, and we're in 1,900 schools across the UK. We love to talk to the government. We love to share our experiences. And I think that gives a powerful feedback loop for policies and decision making, not just for now, but for the future.
Thank you, Dan. That's great. I think we have time for one more quick question. Someone from the audience has asked how evidence helps in the kind of cyclical process of making quality improvements to education systems. So since this is a system level question, and I know that Dr. Basir, you've already worked with your task force in gathering evidence. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you do this in Afghanistan and how you see this working, gathering evidence to improve the quality of education?
Our experience shows that if we don't gather enough information in regard to subject, the policy which we are developing, which would not be working, would not be applicable, would be failed at the time that we are going to apply this policy. Our experience shows that if we are careful in this regard, and we are already in contact with different sectors who will be benefiting from this policy, or they will getting some harms from this policy if we are not already in contact with them, if we base policy according to our opinion, according to our understanding. So it would be a failure at the end. And because of that, we are working with different sectors nowadays to establish a policy which is acceptable for all sectors. And it requires to get more information from different sectors, and then we have a conclusion under the name of a policy. So this is our experience. I think this is very important to get enough data before having any policy.
Thank you, Dr. Basir. I liked your wording earlier about opinion-based policy versus evidence-based policy. That resonated with me as well. Dan or Ernest, I will let the two of you decide who wants to take the last minute to talk about how to use evidence to improve learning. You can do it in a minute.
Happy to take 30 seconds for a break.
Go 30 seconds, go.
So evidence needs to be cyclically used, and every country in the world will have some kind of school improvement plans, etc. And in most cases, not all, they are tick box exercises that gather dust. What's really important is the incentives, a clear need for school leaders to think about evidence, and training. So we need to give them the tools to be able to use that, and provide the information to them. So if you have the information, the training, and the tools, that should support the cyclical process. But Dan, anything further on your side?
If I get the final word, education is that important for us. Someone once famously said, there are no shortcuts to any place worth going. Don't take shortcuts. You need to use the evidence rigorously to make sure that not just on a one-off basis, on a regular basis, the education technology stands up to challenge. So no shortcuts to any place worth going. Thank you.
I love that. I'm going to use that again, because really education is about the journey and what students learn along the way. And so I'm just going to quickly thank everyone for participating in this discussion. I think we could have been talking about this for the rest of the morning or afternoon, as the case may be. But I think one of the most important things that came across to me is that, and that I think about all the time in working in education, is that children and young adults get one shot at their education. And if we come in with policies or practices or technology and we don't know if it works, we're really wasting these children's opportunity to get a fair, high quality education. I think that Dan's medical analogy made a lot of sense, that we wouldn't take medicine if we didn't know if it worked. I think that same rigor should be put forward in all the decisions we make around education. And I'm glad that the three of you at least agree as well. So I think that not to make all of you listening afraid, but this is all of our challenge. We need to put this into practice. We need to make sure that in all of our countries and in industry and in schools and in government that we actually are using evidence to make decisions. So thank you once again to our fantastic speakers, to Dr. Abbas Basir in Afghanistan, to Ernest Janovs in Latvia, and to Dan Sandhu in the United Kingdom. And I would also like to thank all of you who have joined this session and submitted some great questions. I'm sorry we were unable to get to very many of them. And I would like to also thank India Didac as well for organizing this conference. So participants now have a couple minutes during which you can go and join your next conference session. Thank you so much to everyone for attending.
Thank you.